everyone, welcome back. This is Clémence with the Gourmandise School here with day 3 of bread camp. Thank you so much for joining us to make focaccia and milk bread. I hope that everybody had their milk bread with a little bit of chocolate because it's one of the greatest things you'll ever eat. But today's lesson is going to focus on the sandwich loaf. This beautiful sandwich loaf will cost you pennies on the dollar compared to what you're buying in the store, and it doesn't have a lot of crap in it like dough conditioners and things like that. The beauty of this recipe is that you can add any kind of cooked grain that you like. I don't like to do like really big ones, but lots of little things, like if you have leftover quinoa from dinner or some teff that you want to cook. On our website we have a whole blog post on how to cook grains like rice, quinoa, teff, and the ratio of water to grains. But if you've got anything like this left over from dinner, this is teff. Over here we have quinoa. You can bake it into this bread so you get some more fiber and you get lots of really great little bits of texture too. So this one I baked just with oats, and that's what the recipe calls for. But again, you could add in any cooked grains and you can double the amount of cooked grains in this recipe without affecting it too much. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Want to get started? Okay, let's do this. All right, first things first, we're gonna follow the same steps that we've been following in our bread making adventures. And the very first thing we have to do is to wake up the yeast, and we need to give it what? Water, oxygen, food. So first, we have milk. If you want to make this a vegan loaf, you can use almond milk. Oat milk is really good in this recipe. And we also have our yeast right here. We have some melted butter. Again, you can use vegan butter if you want to. We have honey. Honey is our sweetener in this recipe. It's also what's going to wake the yeast up really fast. The beauty of honey is that it's hygroscopic, and in science speak, it means it's going to keep our loaf much softer for a longer period of time. We also have some oats. There's enough liquid in this recipe to soak these oats. So you can soak them overnight and add them in for some additional moisture, but there's enough in here to allow them to soak up. These are not quick cooking oats, but it's not going to be a major deterrent if all you have is like the instant oats. And if you like the maple porridge kind of bread, use your maple oatmeal packet that's been in your cupboard for a while. You'll have a maple porridge bread. We have some salt here and 2 different kinds of flour that we'll put in at the end. But first, let's wake that yeast up, and we're gonna start with our milk. I'm gonna pour it here in the mixer. We're gonna give it some sugar. This is our honey here. Use any kind of honey you like. There we are. Okay, we're gonna sprinkle our yeast over everything. There we are. And now we're gonna layer all the other ingredients. Remember, salt and yeast shouldn't kiss, and it's not because the salt is gonna kill the yeast, it's because salt likes to attract water that yeast needs in order to wake up. So when they compete, salt always wins, so I like to add the salt last. So I'm going to add my oats. If your butter is still pretty warm, add it later, right? Because we don't want to kill the yeast, and if there's a liquid hotter than about 115 degrees, some of your yeast spores could start to die, and we don't want that to happen. So I like to put the flour and the salt first, and then I'll add the butter on top because my butter's still pretty warm. There we go. And so that was hard red wheat that I just put in. So this recipe is mostly whole wheat, and this hard red wheat is kind of like what you'd be getting at the grocery store when you're buying a bag of whole wheat flour. We love to get our whole wheat flour from Grist and Toll in Pasadena, and from a couple of the farmers that sell at our local farmers market. So if you're looking for that super hearty, whole wheaty kind of flavor in your bread, hard red wheat is what you want. This particular variety is called Red Fife. All right, and then what's next? Salt, yep, and our butter, boom, boom. I love deli cups. I've missed these. We had hundreds at the school, and I snuck in to go grab some the other day because they just couldn't prep in like lots of different size bowls anymore. Okay, I'm gonna turn this on. And we're just gonna knead this until we develop that tight gluten structure that we're looking for. If you have any questions while we're waiting for this to come together, please email us at hotline@thegourmandiseschool.com. We're checking that hotline several times a day. We're also doing Instagram Live. We had our first one yesterday. So Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 11 a.m. we're doing as many questions as we can field. I think the last one lasted about an hour of Instagram Live questions. Those were mostly about bread baking, but I'm going to invite you to ask questions about pie and cookies and brownies and all the things that are keeping us sane right now. So I'm going to keep this going. We'll take a look at it in a moment. Okay, let's talk about soakers too for a minute. You can soak these grains overnight rather than cooking them if you have the time, and especially with oatmeal. So if you put water, milk, or oat milk over oatmeal and just let it sit for a little bit, it would be a-okay and work just fine. If you don't have any whole wheat flour, you can use all bread flour for this recipe. She's really loud. You can use all bread flour for this recipe. You're just gonna have to add a little extra flour because the liquid in this recipe is designed to be absorbed by some of the bran in the whole wheat flour. If you have all-purpose flour, make your bread. It won't be quite as tall as if you used bread flour, but I don't want you to overthink it. Use what you have. If you're gonna go with flours like rye, you're gonna get a much denser loaf because again, rye doesn't have those two gluten proteins that can bind to create that web. It's just very starchy and gluey. So just keep that in mind, and if you have more substitution questions, email us or check in with us live on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 11 a.m. Okay, let's take a look at our bread dough. So what I'm looking for, ooh, and my bread dough is very sticky. Sticky is okay, tacky is better. So I'm going to pick it up with some floured fingers here. All right, I'm going to flour this a little bit so we can test it. All right, so I'm going to take this dough and stretch it from side to side. If I can see light shining through it before it tears, it means I've got enough gluten strength. And it is not strong enough yet. So I'm going to put this back, wash my hands, and turn it back on. I'm going to add a touch more flour here. There we go. But just know this, the more liquid you have in your bread dough, the more steam will be created later on when you bake the bread. And also the more active the yeast is going to be. Remember, yeast gets really excited around water, oxygen, and sugar. So the more water you have, the faster things are going to rise. And the more water you have, as long as you have really strong flour to expand and capture that steam, the more air pockets you're going to create that are larger when you're baking your bread in the oven. Ooh, I think we're getting there. Okay, I'm going to take my lightly floured fingers here and grab some more dough and test this out. Okay, let's stretch this and see where we're at. Ooh, look, I can stretch the dough and I can see light shining through it. Oh, there's a little tear. We need another minute. Okay. When you're at the store buying your flour, the most important thing I want you to pay attention to is whether or not it's organic. Some things are really important to buy organic and some things are not. So there are some crops that grow really well without a lot of herbicides and pesticides, like cacao. Just because it's organic chocolate doesn't mean it tastes good. We can cover that at a later date. But there's a lot of herbicide and pesticide used in wheat production. So it's important that your flour is organic. And the second is that it's unbleached. There is no reason and no need to bleach wheat with things like potassium bromate. It makes it really soft, it makes it last longer, but it's not good for you. So make sure your flour is organic and unbleached as often as possible. And don't throw away anything that is. Keep using it, and when you're replacing it, get the good stuff. I think we're almost there. I don't want to jinx it. Let's talk some more. So when you're buying whole wheat flour, try to buy a stone-ground whole grain flour if you can, and make sure that it says, still contains the germ, so that they haven't removed the germ before milling it. What else can I tell you about flour? Flour has an expiration date. It's not going to go bad unless it's whole wheat flour. So whole wheat flour can sometimes get a little bit rancid if the germ is still present. Smell it. If it smells a little bit funny, don't use it. But your white flours are really going to have a hard time going bad. So don't overthink that part. Here we go. All right. Let's do this. Oh, there we are. I'm going to stretch this out between my fingers from side to side, and I can see light shining through it. I don't know if you can see the light shining through it, before it tears. So we are good to go. I'm gonna wash my hands and walk you through the next step. See, it's nice having a tiny kitchen. Everything is within arm's reach, even the sink. So we are going to let this dough rise for 1 hour at room temperature. Your other option, like we learned last week or yesterday, I can't even keep anything straight anymore, is that anytime you're letting something rise for 1 hour at room temperature, it means about 8 hours in the refrigerator. So if you know that you have 5 minutes right now to make your bread dough, but that you want to bake it off at some point tomorrow, that's totally fine. Make your bread dough now and then let it rest in the refrigerator. And the same thing will happen over 8 hours in the cold environment of the fridge than would happen over 1 hour, hey Malcolm, at room temperature. Because yeast gets really excited when it's warm and it goes to sleep and works much slower when it's cold. That's pretty much it. That's why around the equator you have dry, flat, tasteless breads, and why in more northern climates you get tall breads that have a lot of complex flavor, because yeast would die instantly without refrigeration if you were near the equator trying to make a sourdough bread without AC. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our sourdough culture. This is day 3. This is our sourdough culture here. So the first day I took equal parts water and flour by weight, but I just wanted to look like thick pancake batter. I mixed them together really well, encouraged a lot of oxygen to go in there, and then I covered it and put it by my window where it's nice and warm, whatever warmest spot that you have. And then when we looked at it yesterday, there was a little tiny bit of yeast activity. I could just see a few little bubbles. A few of you wrote in and said, there's black spots in my jar, and they're not black spots, that's bubbles. Take a look. I'm trying to find the best light for you. So those little bubbles are due to fermentation. So we have some yeast cells in here that are starting to eat and replicate themselves and grow. And what I want to do is to encourage more of that to happen. The yeast cells that are in here that have already split themselves, they're not going to want to be kept alive. What we want to do is to encourage more new yeast cell growth. So instead of throwing away most of it, which is what I do when I feed an already established sourdough starter, I'm going to throw about half of it away. And I'm going to add again equal parts water and flour, but I kind of want this to happen a little bit faster. So I'm going to add a touch of rye flour. If you can get your hands on rye flour, it's like the greatest food since sliced bread, no pun intended, for yeast. Yeast gets really excited around rye flour. When you're using rye in a starter, and you're using mostly rye, you'll notice that your starter is not going to grow very high, and that's because rye flour doesn't have the strong gluten proteins that some of our other flours do, and so it won't expand, but there'll still be a lot of activity, a lot of bubbles. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw about half of this out. And there we are. And I like to use a butter knife or an offset spatula for this because it's easier to clean than a spoon. And I'm going to pour in some water. And if your kitchen's super cold, use slightly warm water. It'll really help things along. And some flour. I'm going to add a little bit of this rye flour here. And put some in there, just a tiny bit. You know, it's just a little extra kick for our sourdough starter. Okay, it's feeling very, very liquidy. Look, see how wet that is? So I'm going to add just a little bit more flour, just a tiny bit. You can be very precise if you want to. Grab your scale, weigh it out, like 100 grams water to 100 grams flour. But this also works well. Okay. All right, I'm going to take my towel again, cover it, put it in a warm spot, and wait until tomorrow. So day 4 is tomorrow, and we'll really be able to see if we've collected enough yeast in there to make our breads grow. Okay, here we go. I'm going to wipe down this table here, and via the magic of television, I think that we are ready to shape our sandwich loaves. Okay? All right, we are going to use these lovely little loaf pans here, and you can spray them if you want. I don't really love greasing the sides of pans because the grease side of a pan can be a little slippery sometimes for our baked goods, and they have a harder time rising. So for this bread, I'm just going to line it with parchment paper. So we sell flat sheets of parchment paper at the school because it's a godsend to not have to unfurl a roll of parchment. There we go. There we go. All right, I'm gonna set these aside because I doubled the recipe. So I'm gonna show you how to do just a classic sandwich cylinder to plop it in, and also how to do those little buns, kind of like when we did the milk bread yesterday. So I'm going to very lightly flour my surface here. So if you have like a tile countertop at home with a deep grout, do this on a cutting board, but otherwise you can shape bread on any surface whatsoever. Okay, here we go. So this dough I made earlier, and I added a little bit of teff and quinoa in addition to the oatmeal. You can do it in place of or in addition to, just have fun with it. There's no right or wrong here. And I'm going to stretch it out a bit. See, I'm still not pinching. What you want to do is you use these flat open hands to kind of stretch the dough out. I don't love using a rolling pin here because it'll punch down a lot of the activity of the yeast. I'm going to grab the dough and build a little tension. I have a little too much flour here on my surface. So here's what I've got. Got a nice, lovely little loaf. There's way too much flour here. I think I got a little bit excited. So I'm actually going to roll this again. There we are. I'm building that surface tension here so that I can get a nice tall loaf. There we go. Do you see how I'm rolling it onto itself but not allowing the whole thing to roll? I'm getting a little bit of tautness here. And I've got one seam down here at the bottom. So I'm going to pick this up and slide it into my loaf pan seam side down. There we are. And we're going to let these rise for an hour. Okay, now let's do this cute little heart-shaped topped loaf. So for brioche, which we'll be making tomorrow, so exciting. For brioche, you are going to, we're going to do the same thing, which is sort of that heart-shaped sweetheart top on our some of our brioche dough. But right now, I'm going to show you how to do that with just a plain sandwich loaf, and it's really simple. Okay, so what I want to do here is divide this into 8 pieces. So we're going to do 4. There we are. And then each of those in half. See if they all weigh about the same. This one's a little small. So we're going to steal some from here. Okay, and just like we did yesterday, we're going to make little balls out of this. And rather than flouring the dough, I'm going to flour my hands. Okay, I'm going to make a little cylinder. And putting my fingers like this, my thumb and my pinky on the counter, and very slightly sort of cupping the dough. Just gonna let it rub onto the counter and make a nice taut ball like this. Cool. And I like to do like the floured side towards the inside, so the outside stays a little bit tacky so that it can grab onto the table like this. There we are. And if you feel like it's really sticky, again, just flour your hands rather than flouring the dough. All right. There we go. I'm going to arrange this nicely. And in our loaf pan, we'll arrange 2 rows of these lovely little buns. And when they bake, they'll do that whole sweetheart looking thing. And then right out of the oven, I just usually put a pat of butter and a little bit of honey in that crevice in the middle. It makes every slice super delicious. There we are. And there we go. You can kind of get them, flour your little bench scraper here if you can, and just kind of scooch them a little bit so they're a little bit more even. And I'm going to pick these up and put them seam side down into my loaf pan. There we go. And now we're going to let these proof for about 1 hour. And after that hour is up, we'll egg wash our loaves of bread and bake them off. we go. Let me wash my hands really fast. There we go. All right. Let's talk about the difference between heirloom and landrace varieties of wheat and heritage and all of that. Clean off my counter. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so while these are proofing, and we're going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to egg wash them before they're ready so we can pretend that it's happening. But I wanted to talk to you about labels and what different wheat varieties mean, because it can be confusing. So let's first talk about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They're not the same thing as hybrids. So when you hybrid two different kinds of tomatoes and you end up with a third kind of tomato, that's something that could happen in nature, right? A genetically modified seed takes the seed from two different species and brings them together, information from one and puts them in another, so that you can create something that nature would have never done. There are not that many studies that would show that these are poisonous for us or for our health, but what it does encourage is something called monocropping and the reliance on having to purchase seeds on the part of the farmer. So if the farmer has to keep purchasing seed every year that are genetically modified because they're not allowed to replicate themselves, it's not really that beneficial for the soil, because then you're trying to adapt the soil to this seed rather than choosing seeds that are really good for that soil. So not a huge fan of genetically modified ingredients, and just so you know, there is no GMO wheat on the market. It is still being tested, so when you're buying organic wheat, it's not necessarily because you don't want GMOs in there, it's because they're just not using herbicides or pesticides in the production of that wheat. All right, so that's the difference between a genetically modified seed and a hybrid seed. Heritage. So heritage seeds are heirloom seeds. These are fairly interchangeable terms, even though they don't mean exactly the same thing. They are open pollinated, and they've evolved over time by either having humans hybridize things or improve them, or having natural selection take place. All right. So a lot of our seeds are heritage or heirloom, but that's not something that's going to determine how good that was for the soil or any of those purposes. Ancient grains. Often used terms, doesn't really mean a whole lot because all of our grains evolved from ancient grains, but for practical purposes, we're mostly talking about these three grains: emmer, spelt, and einkorn. Most of these originated in the Middle East, where wheat originated from, and they haven't been changed too much over time because we value them and use them because they're really wonderful in and of themselves. So einkorn is incredibly weak. In France, where I'm from originally, it's called petite esplette, and it's a very soft wheat that doesn't provide a lot of good gluten structure, but it makes the most incredible shortbread cookie, one of which Nan from Grist and Toll makes every time she does a tasting, and it will blow your mind. If you're looking to get a taste of this in a cookie form, you can at Friends and Family. So our friend Roxana Julapat has Friends and Family, and when they reopen for you to come in and get breakfast, you should definitely order the einkorn shortbread cookie. So spelt and emmer fall in that category as well. And these are seeds that have typically not been changed too much over time because they're just awesome. They're not super high yields, but we use them for different purposes because they are so special. All right, now let's talk about landrace. I really love this term. It's super interesting. And all it means is that a farmer is taking some seeds and planting them and bulking them. So taking a handful of seeds, planting 5 rows, which once it's harvested turns into 50 rows. I'm making it up. I don't know exactly. It depends on the stock of wheat and how many seeds you get on the stock. But you're letting that seed adapt to that environment. So rather than buying seed every year from a seed provider or seed vendor, and changing the pH of the soil and amending the soil in order to work for that seed, you're taking those seeds and you're adapting them over many generations to that soil, so that you can take one seed, like a handful of seeds of rye, and plant it in one place, and after 5 or 6 generations of it, you get a completely different experience than taking that same packet of seeds and growing it someplace else. And that develops something really interesting that we talk in winemaking about and in chocolate tasting called terroir. And terroir means that that plant has adapted to that environment and the minerality of the soil and what's in the water and in the air and all the things that are growing around it that make that unique and special. So that is the talk about heritage, genetically modified things, ancient grains, landrace varieties, and we hope that as often as possible you're able to buy your flour from a local mill that is supporting farmers that are growing these specialty varieties of wheat, not because they can get a lot of high yield for them, they can produce a lot per acre, but because those varieties of wheat are really amazing for making your breads and pastries and all of that. So I'm going to walk you through the next steps, even though we're going to fake them a little bit. And we're going to take these, oh my gosh, pretend they've increased by about 30%, our breads here. I'm going to egg wash them. So I really love doing an egg wash over my sandwich loaves because I love that golden crust. And it also gives a little bit of extra strength to your bread. These are pretty soft sandwich breads. And adding a little bit of egg wash like this on the top will give it some structure on the top so that as you're slicing your loaves, they don't just like fall apart too much. All right, here we are. Beautiful, and we'll do the same thing with these right here when they're ready. And we'll just like do this a few times and boom. Oh my gosh, look, it's like magic. They don't match exactly, but I am going to take a bread knife and slice into this so you can see the structure of this bread on the inside. And I'll talk to you really briefly about this knife, my favorite bread knife. It's from Worcester. And full disclosure, all of our knives in the school are from this German company called Worcester. And what I really love about this bread knife is just how many little teeth there are here. Oh, we have a little friend. This is Xavier. Do you want to eat a slice of bread?
Oh, sure.
Okay. All right. Since the bread, even little ones will eat. All right, take a look inside here. So we have a fairly closed crumb structure, and that's because this is an enriched bread. But
is that where it breathes through?
That's where it breathes? Sure, we can call it that. All right, here is a nice slice of bread. Here you go.
Oh, you know what goes good with this kind of bread? Jam.
Yep, it's a really great bread for jam. So I like cutting these real thick, like Texas toast, like this. And then I freeze the slices. So I'll slice the whole loaf and freeze it. And then you can take the slices off one at a time, pop them in the freezer so the inside stays like really nice and soft.
You should teach them how to make jam.
We can do that. I think Rose is going to do a marmalade class. All right, so that has been day 3 of our bread camp, sandwich bread. I'm really excited to see all the different variations. Yeah, in just a moment. All the different variations that you're going to come up with for your sandwich loaf. And tune in on Thursday and Friday of this week at 11 a.m. for our live Q&A. See how small this kitchen is? So I can answer all of your bread questions. If you have questions outside of that time, email us at hotline@thegourmandiseschool.com. Have a great day and a happy bake. Bye.
Bye.